Welcome into Carps Corner, and as promised, we're going to start off with the week with the special Buckeye edition. Pretty excited about that. Spring ball across the country for college football has been rolling along now, and for Ohio State, they have a week, they have a couple practices, their acclimation period, then they have spring break. It's kind of unique. Get the guys away, and then they come back. They dive right into it. Basically, 3 practices a week for 4 weeks, and then you culminate with the spring game on April 16th. So right now, first 2 real weeks in pads, those are now in the books. And so I want to take a step back and kind of look at progress that's been made, how some of these guys are looking, the expectations of how things are ultimately going to be in the fall. So a lot of different moving parts and moving pieces. And part of the thing in the spring is, some of the veteran guys, they kind of ease them off a little bit. Defensively, it's a little bit unique because when you're breaking in a new coach, defensive coordinator, new scheme, and some new position coaches, you want to make sure you get a feel for your guys, and you want to make sure that they fully understand what they're doing and they can all work together as a cohesive unit. And so it's a really big part of what they were ultimately trying to get done. So, they've been working through that, but also have some guys with some, nagging injuries and some different things that were getting cleaned up, physically after the season. And so you can't win any games in the month of April and March. So you let those guys rest, you give them some time, you work them in, but it's a great opportunity with that, then to take a look at some of the young guys and see how they play and let those guys, ultimately go out there and get it done. And you want to take a look at some of the guys who I've been kind of impressed with here after, Saturday. We had Student Appreciation Day. I want to give a big hats off to Ryan Day for that. Student Appreciation Day, huge deal. And it's a way to engage your players with your students. And as we sit here and talk all the time around the country, how do you continue to fill these mega stadiums with 100,000 people? How do you get the student body juiced up? Well, there was a time where, student athletes were integrated more into the college campus lifestyle. Now, everybody kind of acknowledges football is a full-time job, and most high-level college sports are. And so, they're not necessarily integrated into the general student population as much as they were in the past. So Ryan Day, has carried on a tradition that was started by Urban Meyer, student appreciation. We're going to bring them out here on a Saturday. We're going to get the students involved, start practice, get a little bit of work in, pour them open for about the last hour of practice and let them circle the field and really allow them to kind of touch and be a part of it. And it's great too, because you have recruits in there, their families, they get to see how passionate the fan base is, and it really works on a lot of levels. And then they had a lot of alumnus back, on Saturday as well. So it really checked all the boxes, for recruits. And they had some big time guys coming through. You had former players, you had, a lot of students coming through, and there was a lot of energy around what was really a spirited practice. I want to look at some of the different things that I've kind of noticed and where I think some of the things are kind of going here. News, Cade Stover, linebacker when he got to Ohio State, moved to tight end, was back at linebacker at the end of last season due to necessity. He started the spring wanting to play linebacker. And, going to this new scheme, it's 4-2-5, only really playing two real linebackers. I didn't know how well he'd, fit in. He could do it. And they talked about maybe moving him to that Leo or Jack, the hybrid defensive end kind of linebacker role. And there's a lot of guys that got work in there. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But flips back over to tight end. And, I look at Cade Stover, guy's a football player, loves the game. And if he wants to play tight end, I think he has a future contributing at a high level at Ohio State and a future potentially at the next level, the NFL. And talking to some of the coaches, talking to NFL scouts, if you can be a big physical blocking tight end that's a good possession receiver and you can play on some special teams, like that checks all the boxes for Cade Stover. He is that guy. And watch him, he made a really nice catch this week in practice. And if he can do that and pair that up with his physical attributes, blocking and being able to kind of harness all that, huge weapon for Ohio State. Because, when you pair him, you put it in there with Mitch, you can have Royer in there. There's a lot of talented G. Scott. You've got all these different pieces that you can go fullback, tight ends, 2 on the field, 3 on the field, and make it really, really tough for defenses. And Ryan Day is an incredibly intelligent offensive mind. Him and Kevin Wilson, they get in the lab. You look at this and say, we can do things that other teams can't do with formations because of the guys that we have. And so when you put those two guys together and you have these different tight end formations, you have big receivers like Ohio State does. That gives you the option then of being able to run the ball in a multitude of ways. And it's a really exciting prospect. I know Justin Fry, new offensive line coach, is fired up, about it. But Cade Stover being back on offense, I think he's finally found his home. He understands this is going to be how he contributes to this Ohio State team. And I think he's going to embrace it. And I think everybody's going to be pleasantly surprised. He's not going to go out there and catch, 10 balls a game. But I'm going to tell you that he's a guy that you will feel confident in on a third down. You'll feel confident in play action, and you're going to love the edge that he brings and the physicality in the run game and the blocking scheme and just the energy and effort. Like, he will be a trend setter and a tempo setter up front, and you can never have enough of those guys. I want to look a little bit at the linebackers as well. Young guys, Gabe Powers, CJ Hicks, looking really good. Both of those guys move really well in space, and they flashed on the field. And it wouldn't surprise me, given this a full season now, and you kind of have a little bit more established hierarchy, but working those guys in at some point during the season, they've moved really well. They've done a good job in coverage. Their spatial awareness is key. They've got some work to do as far as adding mass and bulking up a little bit, but that's going to come with time. But they've looked aggressive in their run fits, communicate well. The guys, you can see the instincts on the football field, and you can see the ability to cover space and some of the twitchiness and that athleticism. And so really excited about this linebacker unit. Number one, with some of the youth that they have, and with Powers and Hicks and what they've been able to do thus far, but then also looking at some of the veteran players. Steele Chambers has come a long way, settling in. He's a great athlete, still finding his way a little bit with some fits and just making sure that he trusts his speed. He can catch and get to just about everything, but not overrunning plays and making sure that he, is patient and understanding. And hey, the best thing, he played running back for a long time. Find the hole. You know where it's going to open up. You can see it from the other side. So just mirror that thing and really pace the back. But, his partner back there, Tommy Eichenberg, has been really, really impressive this spring. You can see the difference a year makes with guys when they settle in. They get a solid defensive line in front of them who's confident, who they know what they're doing. You're all installing a scheme together, in a system where everybody knows what to do. You understand your fits and you get work and reps at it. And you're not trying to adjust to the college game while also trying, to learn this defense. And then all of a sudden you're thrown in there and there's just a lot of things going on. And especially when you're struggling and your defense struggles as a linebacker, you take that personal and you're going to feel a brunt of that. And Tommy Eichenberg did last year. And you see the strides that he's made. He's moving really well on the field. Going to be the leader of that defense, not the most vocal guy you're going to find, like not a huge personality, but he's a leader because he does it in his own way. Played with a guy, AJ Hawk, not the most vocal guy in the world, but he goes out there, he executed at a high level, played with tremendous attitude and effort. And if you do that, guys will respect you and they will follow you. And it feels like Tommy Eichenberg is kind of settling in, this spring. And it's been tough because Cody Simon hasn't had a chance to really be in the mix as much as he would have liked. Injured, obviously didn't play in the Rose Bowl. And so he's got some work to do to get back. I'm fully confident he'll be back and be able to play at a really, really high level, but he does have some work to do to be able to get that done, but very confident in the linebackers. Last year, early on in the season, you kind of felt like they were a little bit of a liability. This year, I think that they could really be a strength of this defense. The defense is going to be much improved. They've been much more aggressive. They've been more multiple. A lot of the different coverages and different things, the way they set things up, the way they disguise, they make everything look the same. And the more you sit there and watch it and you can see them getting comfortable with it, I think everybody's going to be really pleasantly surprised. Not that there's not high expectations, because Jim Knowles knows that. He understands what those expectations are. And I'm not saying that they're not going to give up a point or be the 85 Bears, be the most dominant defense in college football, but they're going to make some big plays. They're going to be much stouter and sounder against the run. And I really feel like this defense is going to be coming into their own. All right. Now I want to kind of focus a little bit on the defensive line. And taking a look, JT Tuimoloau playing really good. Him and Jack Sawyer, I think people are going to be really impressed with this pair of defensive ends, this pair of edge players. And you and Jack, he's got a little bit of position versatility that I love about him. And I think JT is going to ultimately end up kind of like a Cam Hayward guy, huge frame, big physical. He's pretty explosive off the ball, checking a lot of boxes, and he's really young, like only going to get better. And so he'll probably be more of a traditional hand in the ground guy. But I want to look at Jack Sawyer for a minute. And, you know, the second year guy out of Pickerington North, you know, came in, you can see the transformation, started putting some weight on him with Mickey Marotti. And he played a lot of positions in high school, moved around a lot. And you can start to see that athleticism coming out. Does a great job rushing out of a 2-point. And then they've also started asking him to do some different things. So I want to take a look at this, and we're going to look at, you know, some different pictures and photos of this Jim Knowles defense and how they're going to deploy him. And this is how ultimately I think they'll be using Jack Sawyer. And so first, we can see him sitting here normally, and like, what is their classic 3-4 look? It's kind of a traditional 4-down look, but you just stand the defensive end up. You see him circled there at the bottom. That's going to be Jack Sawyer. You can rush out of that. You can drop out of it. And he really provides that nice staggered stance to be able to take off and rush the quarterback, but then move around and do some things as well. And it gives you a lot of abilities to disguise the defense and do some other things. Now, this second piece, this is something I'm really excited about. It's more of a pure 3-down look, and they stack that Jack or Leo player where Jack Sawyer, they stack him in the middle. And as you take a look at this, you can see him, he's in a square stance. And so sometimes they shift him back out and rush outside. Sometimes they twist him in the middle and he rushes in there. Sometimes they drop him, but there's a lot of things, and it makes it really tough for the offensive line and the quarterback and the opposition to try to count him. Like, do you count him as a linebacker? Do you count him in the rush up front? And that matters for blocking schemes and for coverage. And so Jack Sawyer has the ability to be able to do that because of just his athleticism and how fluid he is. And he's a very natural player, standing up and playing without his hand in the ground, which isn't true of all defensive linemen. And so I'm really, really pumped about what Jack can be able to do with that. And that's just a little taste of watching him kind of move around, and how exciting I think and how this season is going to progress as they continue to build and like put different bolt-ons to this defense. And so I love going back and watching, like, okay, what has Jim Knowles done before? How is he starting to install some of this stuff at Ohio State? And you can see some of these things starting to happen, and what he ultimately did when he was at Oklahoma State, and now projecting this onto Ohio State and what he's doing there. And then the other guy who I'm really pumped about, he'll play in that Jack Leo kind of hybrid position, is Mitchell Melton. Linebacker, you know, he's been injured, he's been beat up, would have been a huge asset to have him last year. Unfortunately, suffered an injury, was out for the year, but he's, a bigger linebacker, in the 240s now, can get to 250, 6'3", big frame, really athletic on the edge. And so I think him and Jack Sawyer are going to give you a great 1-2 punch. And, Mitch has looked good in practice, being able to move. He's starting to develop his rush. He's strong and physical on the end, continue to add some weight and bulk up a little bit. And you're going to have really two nice options there for that Jack or Leo position. And both of those guys, fluid athletes. And Mitchell Mountain will even be able to probably give you a little more, options there with maybe even some man-to-man coverage on tight ends and some other things that, Jim Knowles, when you have the athletes to be able to do some different things, you can really begin to expand, the packages of what you ultimately do and how complicated you can get if you have guys who can do a lot of different stuff. And so that Jack Leo, the stand-up defensive end position, that hybrid, very, very valuable in this defense. And if you can find the right type of guy, those physical attributes, and it's tough, it's hard to recruit those guys, but I'm excited to ultimately see Jack Sawyer with what I've seen from him in practice, what I know that Jim Knowles has done in the past, what they're starting to install, and looking back historically, like it's something that's going to pair up really, really nicely for the Buckeyes. So excited what those guys are going to be able to do. Then I want to finish up taking a look at the back end. Jordan Hancock looking really, really good. Young corner, probably could have played a little bit more last year. They were working some of the veteran guys in, but has done a great job and has all the physical attributes that you want from a guy playing that position over there on the edge. He's got it all. He's got the height, the length, the speed, and he's really competitive. And so it's been nice as they've been kind of easing Cam Brown back in. I think Cameron Brown's going to be really good. And the fact that he came back this year is also a huge benefit to have that veteran presence in the room. And he played well. You could see how competitive he was against Michigan. He was beat up a little bit last year. I think he'll be a really nice NFL player. And he has all those physical attributes that I mentioned, about, Hancock. It's the same with him. And so he's been here for a while. His experience, his game savvy, he'll be able to educate some of these guys, the Hancocks, the Denzel Burke, and so you're getting a chance to see some of those guys with, Cam out, and you're developing, this young room. And so Jordan Hancock really, really playing well. I know people were upset that they didn't get some transfers, in the portal, other guys coming in. Wow, it'd be nice. Can we rely on these? Listen, Ryan Day knew what was up. And the defensive staff knew, what they had here with these young guys. So when you bring older guys in, maybe from another program, do they fit within the culture? Do they ultimately fit with what you're trying to do? Are they going to have their own bad habits? They're going to be set in their ways. Like, sometimes it can be a detriment regardless of how skilled they are. And what's nice is you have the talent there you've recruited. Now you can just elevate it. And so you're getting more comfortable with seeing these guys in the spring, especially as some of the older guys, have had to sit out and, rest and recover and continue to rehab some things. Hancock really seizing his opportunity. You're going to pair those three guys up. And I think that that's going to be a really nice set of corners there. And then one other guy I want to kind of mention here, early enrollee, Kai Stokes, early enrollee out of Florida, incredibly smart player. And you can see his competitiveness and his streak of how sticky his coverage is. Like, not all guys early on, especially when they enroll early, you can see that kind of edge that they have. Kai Stokes, he has that. And John Cooper used to always say, if a dog's going to bite, he'll bite as a pup. And you can see flashes of it now, with Kai Stokes, to the point where, there might be a point where he's getting his black stripe removed sooner rather than later. Talking with Ronnie Hickman about it, the safety for Ohio State. And he's a huge fan of Kai Stokes and everything he's been bringing to the table. And you can just see those flashes and how well he goes out there and performs in practice. So really strong start to spring ball for him. Now we'll see if he can kind of keep this up and stay the course for the final 2 weeks. So pretty nice there. And then lastly, take a step back from spring ball for a minute. Want to dive in and talk about my guy, Malcolm Jenkins, who retired earlier this week. The 13-year pro, 3 Pro Bowls, 2 Super Bowls, only player to defeat both Tom Brady and Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl. 2 of the greatest quarterbacks you're going to find. Beat Manning with the Saints, beat Brady with the Eagles. Started his career in New Orleans, went to Philadelphia, ultimately made his way back to New Orleans. And I know that the New Orleans front office and coaching staff, they made a decision to kind of let him walk in free agency. He goes and signs with Philly. And after about a year, they realized they made a mistake, not only for the guy as a player, is what he's giving you on the field, but what he does to everybody else. Malcolm's always been that guy. He's always had that dog mentality, even early on. But what he does, he lifts the guys around him because of how hard he goes. He raises the expectation levels. He doesn't allow guys to slack. He's not afraid to get after it, and he has a dominating personality. He's not the most vocal guy you'll find all the time, but there's a ferocity to his personality and how poignant he can be and how direct he could be when things needed to improve, and he would be the first person to address it. And so Malcolm Jenkins, man, congrats on a job well done. And I always go back and look at this with him. And as we were just talking about some of these young defensive backs for Ohio State, Malcolm came in 2005. He was a freshman. Him and James Laurinaitis, kind of set the tempo there for the next 3 years. After I left, and AJ and all those guys, they were the next group that kind of ran that defense. And you could see it early on with Malcolm. And he was our nickelback as a freshman. We had probably about 9 seniors, a junior, a couple of juniors out there. And then when we would go to our nickel personnel, bring in another defensive back, which we played like half the time, it was Malcolm. And to be a true freshman out there, like, when you're battling for a national championship and you have a lot of seniors who have played a lot of football, you can't be the weak link, and they're always going to lean on you. And I'll never forget, we lost to Penn State in Happy Valley. Out there, it was a crap show of trying to get to the game with delayed flights and weather. And we had to fly into Harrisburg and bus up. I mean, it was an absolute unmitigated disaster. I'll tell the story sometime. We ended up losing that game, but we had a call in the game, and, things weren't going well. Our offense wasn't, scoring a ton. You hear that cat call all through the PA system. And it's just a disaster. They got a wide out. It's bad, but we're keeping the game close. And defensively, we know we've got to play great. We got to give our offense the ball in good field position. And we had a call, I believe it's called field blitz check, set the front, depending on the formation. Either we're bringing, the Sam outside linebacker, the middle linebacker from the wide side of the field, or depending if the tight end where he's at, we're going to ultimately bring our corner off of the short side and have him bring pressure that way and get the front moving, towards the field, and everybody flows that way. Well, Malcolm was that corner, and the call comes out. It's going to be the corner. Boom. They got it. There's not a worry in the world that Malcolm's not going to go. Everybody knows how smart he is, and he's a studier, and he was locked in. So we call it blitzes. They run the play over to his side. Fullback leading up, AJ playing the will linebacker, spills it and leverages the ball outside to Malcolm. Malcolm's a little deep on his blitz path, probably thinking he's going to get a sack on the quarterback, and they decide to run the ball. The ball kind of splits between him and AJ. They probably pick up 8 to 12 yards, a decent gain for an offensive play against us, and obviously a decent gain on a run. We get back to the huddle. I'm on the wide side of the field. Like, what the heck happened over there? No one knows. And AJ's like, listen, I hit it outside. It's supposed to be Malcolm. And I'm like, Malcolm. I look at him like, what the heck are you doing, man? You got to be on that. And he deadpans me, stares me back straight in the eyes. I got it. It's not happening again. All right. Look back at AJ Schley, like, everybody, we're good, man. And he didn't blink. He didn't flinch. And dude never made that mistake again. It's a big moment. Like, you're going to make mistakes as young players. But at that point, you knew, like, we're in good hands. This dude, the moment will never be too big for him. Not that he'll make every play in the history of the world, but he's never going to be unprepared or have any degree of hesitation. And that, to me, like, as I watched Malcolm throughout his NFL career and got a chance to play against him, it was always the story for him. He was always ready to go, elevated the people around him. And in the biggest moments, never flinched, didn't blink. He knew what he was supposed to do. He went out and executed. And for that, man, like, I hold Malcolm Jenkins in incredibly high esteem. He's a great person, better person than even a player. Came to Ohio State as a 3-star guy, coming in camp, no camp invite, and just found the best receivers and battled to the point where they had to figure out who this guy was. Jim Trussell, like, hey, you want to go take a look at this kid? Who is he? We don't have any information on him. And, the kid, Malcolm Jenkins from Piscataway, he got offered. They checked his film out. He came in, and all of a sudden you knew the guy was ultimately going to be great. All-American at Ohio State captain, like, check every single box for the guy you want. He's a dude that you want on your team, regardless of position, regardless of scheme, anything else. Malcolm Jenkins is a guy you can put out there who will play well and have success, because that's the type of dude he is. Well, that's it for this edition of Carps Corner, the Buckeye edition, breaking down spring ball and telling some stories about my former teammate, Malk, who Jenk's a great dude, and wish him all the best in retirement, and hopefully get his body healed up and be a normal human now. Thanks for watching.